How did he discover the role of electricity in soil? A bloody big mistake. One event, to tell you the truth, and it was after I'd used some basic slag on the soil, and as I'd said to Bernard and Ursula, we had on the west coast of New Zealand, they've got huge deposits of iron sand, volcanic sands, and they use it in a steel mill in not far from Auckland, and it's an electrically driven steel mill, and they poured this large quantities of iron sand in, and to get the slags off, they would use large quantities of calcium and magnesium. The interesting thing about it, at that stage, the iron sand had large quantities of silicon as well. So a majority of the slag that was coming off was silicon based. So I think it was 10% actual silicon that came off. And so naturally, with the heat and the activity of electricity, the silicons were in a calcium and magnesium silicates, which are some of the most available. Also very expensive if you want to go and buy them, but so be it. And you could buy this basic slag for, I think it was about $30 a ton delivered at home, which was the cheapest product I could buy. And I bought it for the calcium and the magnesium and the phosphorus in it. So it was 30% calcium, 5% magnesium, and 1% phosphorus. So I bought that thinking that these minerals are what I need. Well, they were what I needed on the farm. And when I put them on the farm, I had the most amazing response. It was incredible. And where we had really horrible types of native grasses, all this red clover and everything grew. And I just thought it was because the minerals were available. But I'm not quite sure how long it was afterwards. We're feeding minerals to the stock in fish bins, like flat plastic fish bins, and we had a rain event, which we quite often do around here, probably 5 or 6 inches of rain overnight. And when I went to move the stock in the morning, the bin was full of water, but there was these lines in the bottom of the bin, and like it's I had a small quantity of kelp meal in the mix of minerals that I was using for the stock. And in these lines, the kelp meal had lined up in a manner that we were attracted to these electrical lines in the soil. I didn't know at the time that they were electrical lines, but I mean, how did that happen? Because these lines were exactly east-west. They were 27 millimeters apart, and I could have had mice Olympic swimming in my fish bin. It was perfect. And what is going on with this? So given that we'd had such a great result with the basic slag, I just well, what else is going on with this that nobody's talked about or understood? And I just started asking lots of questions, and I don't know, the universe sort of just opened up and swallowed me up on the whole process, because everywhere I went, I seemed to get answers as to what was happening. I went to a solar chap in Pyroa who was fitting solar panels to camper vans and that. And I said to him, what's going on with these solar panels? Well, how do they work? And he gave me a small paper on them that's basically said that the solar panels were made of silicon, phosphorus, and boron. And I'm going, that sounds like soil. And what's happening with that? It's like, that's amazing. So we had another place in Ngatea, which was another 20 kilometers away. And it was a gemstone store, and they had a booth in the gemstone floor where they had it all blacked out, and they just used UV light to project onto the silicon crystals. and to show you how they luminesce. Now, unlike other colors, which is we see the color that's reflecting off, this actually is luminesced or projected back off the crystal from the production or change in the light. So the photons from the light particles go into the crystals and they get modified. And so as I went on, though, it was the photons were getting converted to heat, light, and electricity. Now, I'll say this part now is like I sort of had a real, and they were at the time they were just saying, oh, it just bumps electrons off and makes electricity. I'm going, doesn't sound right to me, because you're actually going to run out of electrons. Like if you've got a particle and you're just going to keep hitting it. And it wasn't till later that I met a guy from NASA when I was in the States, and he said, nah, we've categorically proven that the photons had convert when they put off the heat and light into electrons, because they were doing it in space with their solar panels and there wasn't any electrons. So, and there was an infinite amount of energy coming in through the sun. So when I started to realize, like, we had put on some silicon, we had created a solar effect. And also then I was reading also Phil Callahan's books, and he was saying about paramagnetism that makes things linear. And so our raw parts of soils are actually reasonably high volcanic soils, and they actually have a reasonable paramagnetic level already. So inadvertently, with us using the basic slag and setting up an electrical process, we had set up a solar panel in the soil. But the more that I actually sort of dug into it, the more I realized, hold on, this is a natural process. So I just had put these products on and it would just did what nature does. So there was another facet where going, well, the basic slag was being taken from production, and I needed to know, well, if I'm going to do this on a larger scale or a long-term scale, I need to know how to create this electricity with the silicon all the time. And it was an accidental process about 50 or 60 kilometers from us. There's an estuary at, it's called the Hauraki Gulf, and there was a quarry there right on the edge of the estuary, and you could go and buy river rocks, nice round river rocks, beautiful for the garden. So I went there to get some garden rocks, and I was talking to the chap, and he said, and I was talking to him about, why don't you let some cattle in around the quarry, because the quarry was covered in lucerne, red clover, all sorts of amazing plants. And he said, oh no, they get out. And I said, well, they wouldn't go anywhere. There's too much nice stuff here. They'd just stay. And then I was talking to him about, I was looking for certain things, and he was a nice guy, and I started chatting. He says, oh, you should use some of the sludge out of our pond. If we put that on the tomatoes, I can grow tomatoes as high as the house. And I go, doll's house, yeah. But he was right. The following week, I went back and I got a trailer load of this, and I got a bit too much of it in the poor old car that driving home, like very, very, very slowly. It was a whoops, I got a bit keen. So I used some of that in the garden, and I started to muck around thinking, well, okay, Callahan's saying you need paramagnetic rock to create the linear effect. I could get iron sand, because I now worked out that there's a linear effect with the iron sand. There had to be a conduct. And so I started mucking around. I thought, okay, I'll throw a couple of brews together, and I put some trial plates out on the farm. And it was really interesting. In the greenhouse, I just had cherry tomatoes, but they grew out through the vents in the top of the greenhouse, and they actually started coming down the side of the greenhouse as well. And I was like, well, this is pretty cool. We ate cherry tomatoes forever. And also it was really quite funny, and that was part of it. I had to go back and learn later, but we had an algal bloom sort of thing in the bottom of the greenhouse. It sort of grew up, it went all fuzzy and pink, and what I'd what I later found out, because we'd got the material from right next to the ocean, it actually brought the cyanobacteria from the ocean. And it probably was the precursor to showing me how important those guys were. So then I went back to the gem factory and said to him, well, can I test this material in your booth? And he said, oh, I can do better than that. I've got a little box here, take it home with you and go for it. You can play with all the different materials and see if they fluoresce. And it was a really good eye-opener. Like the paramagnetic material, when you put the black light in there, it is blacker. It goes blacker. It's amazing. It's just like the blackest thing as a black hole of Calcutta. And the material that we had was from the Hauraki Gulf. It had a slight, how would you say, mauve, or a sort of nearly a crimsony color coming off it. So I could see that it was fluorescing, and I'm going, well, okay, so we're in the game as far as a silicon material that would react with the sunlight. And what I went on to find out with all my mucking around and trial plots and buggerizing about was that it had to be so fine to be effective that you'd put it in your fingers with like a lump of it and spit on it, and that you rubbed it and it disappeared. Like the fineness of the material was so fine that it just, yeah. So the work I'd seen on that was that the surface area of a product like that, they call it, I think, crystocrystalline or crystocrystalline, which is said to have surface area. A cubic inch has a surface area of 7 square miles. So surface area in this game with the solar is absolute. Like the more area you have available to sunlight coming in, the bigger the opportunity you have to grow, enlarge the electricity. So then what happened from there was just crazy. It just I started playing around with it on the farm and seeing amazing things what were going on. And the trial plots that we put in, you could be half a mile away or a kilometre away, and you could look up the paddock and you could see this green square in the paddock where I'd done a trial plot. And we had a lot better germination in them. And I thought, wow. So we set forth making a bit of this stuff and putting it out there. And that's when we really had to start looking at all the other facets that came with it, and all the training that I'd done with Brookside on soil balancing and that. But and as I said to Bernard and Ursula when they're here, like, whatever you do, you multiply it with the electricity. So if you've got poison in the soil, you'll have more poison in the soil. It's like you're just putting the plug in to your amplifier on the stereo and turning the volume up. And so if you've got bad music, you've got lots of really bad music. And that was very brought home to me really quickly, where I started to notice things about some of the plant growth, and finding out we had quite high aluminium toxicity. And that's where the science side of it really clicks in, because you have to see the reactivity series of elements to how they are taken from raw material. So like if you have the stuff of it's potassium, magnesium, calcium, back to front, and then it gets to the point of aluminium and zinc swapping around. And what we were doing is we were harvesting aluminium just like they do in the smelters. And so we had way too much aluminium availability. And the other part is that, like, what I was looking at was in the ocean. If you take zinc and aluminium to the ocean, their reactivity series flips. So instead of aluminium being available ahead of zinc, it goes the other way. So zinc is ahead of the aluminium, and that's how they protect the aluminium boats. Well, I sort of thought, well, why aren't we trying to work in an environment like the ocean? We want the zinc to come first before the aluminium, and how do we deal with that? So that's when the next, another part of the silicon thing came in. The first off, we thought, okay, we just got to get the pH up so that the aluminium goes into hydroxide so that we haven't got an issue. But then we started noticing major problems with other things that were going on, going, well, hold on here, we've solved the aluminium problem, but we still haven't got fantastic growth. And then right at that point, then the EMF stuff started showing up, because I had trees that I'd planted, specifically little oak trees that had been planted on part of the farm, and they started looking like hormone sprayed thistles, like well, it did. It looked exactly like it, like, how you spray thistles and they get all twisted up and bent and turned over. And these oak trees looked like them. They only got so high, and they just went terrible. And I knew the farm had been sprayed before I bought it, because otherwise he wouldn't have offered me a drum of 200 litres of a Tordon 50D. And I said no. But so I didn't know what was going on, and I tested that with Brookside Laboratories to see what physical chemicals I had on the farm, and they couldn't find any. So whatever had been put on, the physical stuff had gone. And it wasn't until I met John Godwin that we started testing with what he called a therotest, where he was using the vial or the frequency of the product and matching it against our soil. And we were finding that the soil was just contaminated to buggery. And I can now say quite categorically, the silicon portion in the soil, in the oxide form, will hold the memory of chemicals. The earth has a memory, and there's no doubt that you can't get away. It reminds itself of what it's had before. It knows. And so when you put the electricity through, you're just putting a frequency off. And it's the same thing of turning the dial up. And I go, oh. So I didn't know. At this point, we had an electrical charge that we could produce, but if your soil was in good shape, it amplified it. But if it was in bad shape, it made it worse. So John sort of said, well, why don't you put some of our remedies and this and that out? And I said, well, this is going to be a bit bloody difficult. I've got 900 acres of hill country going up and down and all these other things. I can't spray it, do it, whatever else. So I'd done a bit of broadcasting before with radionics. So I had a copper pole, was actually a copper pipe, a 4-inch copper pipe, and I dug it into the ground on the top of a hill, and I tied the remedies onto a copper wire and hooked it onto another brass rod, and I put it on the top of the pole and just left it and see what happened. Well, some of the events that came from that, because all the electrical charge in the soil obviously made it a better amplifier. One day I remember I found out that I had he tested me, he says, oh, you've got cadmium in the farm. So I put the remedy up. I didn't even get 200 meters and I could taste the metal in my mouth. It was coming out of me as well. And by the time I got home, cadmium's a pretty nasty one. It causes bipolar and that. And my wife at the time, she came, what have you been doing? You already knew. It was chaos. And it lasted for 2 or 3 days. I knew what had happened, and I had to just sort of but it was the DDT one that really set the process of understanding how much we could put it out over a much bigger area. I put the remedy for DDT up in the pole, and it was 2 farmers, one in Dannyverk and the other one in Inglewood in Taranaki, and they were both getting tested with the dairy company, and it was showing up DDT in their milk. both of them had put some of our product on their farms, and they didn't know what to do. But the great thing was that Fonterra was testing them when we actually went inadvertently. I just put the remedy up, and their test spiked the next day. It went up, and then over the next 2 days it disappeared, and then the DDT was gone. And so that corresponded directly from us doing the remedy. And so then we went on to prove that we could actually go even further. And we had a farmer in north of Balclutha in a place called Heriot, who's probably 1,200 kilometres away, and he bought a farm and he was going to make it organic. And it had a high DDT level after he bought it, and they wouldn't let him go organic. And he said, what can I do? And I said, I'll put some of our stuff on, and I reckon I'll probably be able to get it. So he put our product on, and I set the DDT thing up in the tower, and I think 3 months later they tested again, and they couldn't find any residue at all. So that was a fairly good success on that process. So we found that this broadcasting process and amplification of the what we're doing has a massive effect. And as when Bern and Ursula were here, it was actually quite interesting when I found that rock had been knocked out from under the fence, and then I went on to find out, hold on, there was another one, and when I'd fixed them, calmness came back quite significantly to the cows, because they were bellowing their butts off and they were really annoyed about things. They really know. So that's that's a fair chunk of where we're going. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, Yannick, do you have any questions, or can you pretty much?
It's a lot of information in a few minutes that you explained of your story. But what I like about your story, that I read a little bit in your book, and I saw some of your videos. What I like is your viewpoint, that you discovered that just by observing nature, observing around you, and thinking about questions, and then it's like step-by-step process like this. And I like that very much. And real scientists in the past, it was first observation, like you do. and then we ask questions, and we search, and we look, and we are always looking for truth, always looking to try to understand how it works. And it's never finished. and we never finish we never finish to have questions, because as soon as we have an answer, it opens up to new questions. And well, I really believe that what we are discovering about what I like the most is the whole electrical viewpoint of nature around and environment, and how it interacts with the material side of life, and the nutrients, and I think we are really in the beginning of a whole new development in agriculture, and what you do is really amazing about this. I like it very much. And like, for example, what you explained of your observation on the beach with the kelps that dissolve by electrolysis, and the sunlight and the silica. It's just before us every day, but we never looked at it. And it's like this that we become conscious that we have all the answers, we can learn just by observing around us. But if we don't know, or if we are not open, if we don't have the question, then we don't see it. Then we just pass by and we don't see it. And we are just now, we are like amazing times where we open doors what we do and what I do and what we speak about electroculture and those things, there's always a before and an after. When people begin to discover those effects and those phenomena, then we see nature around completely differently, and then we begin to find new solutions like you do. It's really amazing. I like it very much. Yes. Yes. How can we begin? Yes, maybe other questions, or if you have a question, I'm ready to answer too. But what I would say, if you would advise a student, an exam, just a question that come into my mind now. If there was a new student in that want to learn agronomy, and he want to know about soil health, what would you advise him to look after to open his mind to new things about all what you discover, to develop new techniques, or there's like a whole field that they ignore in today's soil education? What would you advise, or even to farmers, to look after the first steps to change in a certain way?
Well, for the students, I'd say don't go to university.
Yes, maybe, yes.
It's a step backwards. It's actually not even. It's such a winding back of stupidity, because all of these trials, all of the universities are merely trying to prove a system that doesn't work, can work, but it doesn't, and it won't. And all they're doing is priming them to try and keep it going, and it's not working. You know, I just have to go out and look on the way home and go, can't people see what's going on? You know, like it's so apparent. There's so many aspects to this process, and like showing people, like if people come to have a look, I try and give them a like, wow, look at this, but I also give them a physical aspect in the sense of doing muscle testing and strength testing, showing about when things are working well and how your body interacts with your nature and that around you. And it's a learning process. And I guess the starting point that we usually start with farmers is we do a total soil test and an available soil test, so that we can see what are the minerals part of it and what are the limiting factors there. I pretty much know that the soils are going to be toxic, because our past 100 years of agriculture has been toxic. So I know that in most cases we can deal with that with the fungal species that we've developed. Well, we haven't developed them, we've just accumulated them, that they have taken the place of the towers, is that the fungal species will clean that up, and they're incredibly good at that. And we have to look at the mineralogy, the toxicity, getting the energy in, and then having an environment that allows the cyanobacteria to go to work, because they really are the most prolific of all photosynthesizers on the planet, and we can't even see them. And if they work, your soils grow. And when your soils grow and they go through a digestion process, each individual cell then converts the minerals in the soil into the tissue salts or the cell salts that the electricity can move through electrolysis. So like once the cell has converted the phosphoruses into calcium phosphate, potassium phosphate, sodium phosphate, and so forth, you have minerals that can be moved through electrical process. Like phosphorus will not go anywhere while it's still an anion. Electricity cannot pick it up. But if it gets converted to calcium phosphate, potassium, it can be moved through electrical current. So all of these processes impact on the next process, and then impact on the next process, and impact on the next process. And I think part of the thing that, and I'm pleasantly surprised these days when I talk to people about this stuff. I say, look, we are a result of frequency. So all creation is just a matter of frequency. It's like, how does a particular element respond to a frequency? So like DNA and all that sort of thing, it's just a self-replicating frequency. If the frequency goes off track, or there's not enough minerals to complete the DNA, you're going to get an aberrant DNA. You'll get cancers and all sorts of things. So what you have to do is have all the minerals that they need to make the DNA, and then you have to have the right frequencies going in there. So we've got to get rid of the toxicity. And this is our creation in ourselves as well. We create our own shit. Well, create our good stuff too. It's like, yeah, and it's really cool. I mean, it's one thing about going through this whole exercise. When I first started in the early 2000s, I wasn't even surprised when the whole thing just took off and it got so busy and whatever else. But when I look back on it, going, bloody hell, to anyone else, that was just freaking amazing. But this time, now that I've learnt the law and I've learnt so much more on the soil side of things, I know what's going to happen. It's starting to do this now, but I'm ready for it. But that's part of me being, yeah, that's cool. We've just got to get this sorted out and away we go. So that's just, everything's responding around us. So we have to do the same for our soils and same for our animals and everything else to live in an environment where we're not living in a toxic environment, whether it's toxic chemicals or toxic thinking. And this is a lot of the issues that I'm seeing with farmers on the commercials, on the larger scale, where they think they're going to put halters on cows and they hold them in one part of the farm and they do this and they go, well, that's all very well, but when did you go and have a look at your farm? When did you actually observe the species, and when did you see what was actually happening? Oh, no, we did it all from satellite. So does the satellite see everything, does it? Is it your artificial intelligence of how your farm operates? And why are you actually a farmer then if you don't actually want to go out on the farm? So it'd be nice, with that question going back to you, Yannick, you know, the young people need to love nature or love being out in it. It's all right to go and lie in a paddock in the middle of the cows and let them come and sniff you and see what they see and feel what's going on. We've got too analytical about shit that they can't understand until you actually get a feel for it. And it's, yeah, when you do, your observations mean something. And that was really what I saw early on in my farming career, was people were going to field days and they were talking about their observation and they were getting beaten up by the scientists, telling them they didn't know what they were looking at and they were all full of shit. And I'm going, who are you? You know, like if I saw that I fed copper to our cows and then I fed copper and selenium to our cows and they went up in production by 10% overnight, my observation is I'd be a fool if I didn't carry on doing that. But just because the university plonker says, oh, that's all totally irrelevant, that's bullshit, well, then I'd lose 10% production and I'd have a whole lot of sick cows. So we've got to stop looking outside of ourselves for the answers and start looking internally and willing to ask questions of people. I mean, I'm like what you said, is like the more we learn, the more we need to know. The more we ask, the more it comes. And these sorts of discussions are really, really valuable to just keep turning the dial up for ourselves. I would say, sorry, carry on, Bernie.
Ewan, can you tell us about the story with the electric fences? What you observed with these electric fences? Because I think it's from interest for a lot of people, because they set up electroculture in identical way you have used the electric fences for the cows.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was just another one of the many issues that come with the process with the electric culture, is that the earthing system for electrical systems is the most damaging, because if it brings the energy off neighbors' farms into your farm, it will bring damage with it. And so what we learned, that these certain types of rocks would clean the EMF, and we had to go to all the earth pegs on the electric fences, the earths on the incoming power systems on our houses and everything, so that everything that went through that system was actually cleaned. And yeah, I mean, we've got 4 neighbors, and I had to go around and sort out all these fences and clean the farm to keep, it's like a big Faraday cage. You stay out, don't come near us. We don't want to. And when Bernard and Ursula were here, well, that was when I actually realized that one of the rocks that I'd set up to keep us clean had fallen. It got kicked out in the paddock, and the chaos that came about from it was just like, oh God, you just don't want it. So these are the parts of the incoming material. Like, first, inside, you've got to get the fungal species, clean it up. Secondly, you have to then keep yourself clean from what's coming in outside. And yeah, if you don't take any notice of that, you can actually make your farm worse, if that's at all possible. You can go from hero to zero in no time at all. And I'm certainly seeing that probably more in year 2 of the farms. Like the first year, it's going through a whole regurgitation. The electricity is not high in that, but where the farm should go in the second year, if you haven't dealt with the stuff, it's very, very noticeable. So it's just another. I did a little bit of a video on that. I think Paula's going to put it up. But say where we're heading for on this process is that we want to put a online newspaper like process is what we're doing, but a whole lot of different issues about food, health, quality, everything. Discussion, farmers standing up for themselves, telling these bloody nitwicks where to go. Because like there was an article just the other day, which I just had to bloody laugh. Scientists find in laboratory plants grow faster and expand more with an electrical charge. And I'm going, really? Did anyone ever look at some of the older material? God, but they had to put a white coat on. So, and do this. So Paula, my partner's really keen for me to start wearing a white coat and silly glasses and taking the piss out of them when I do some of these videos. And so, yes, we went to the laboratory, yes, and we stuck in a fence in a wall, just to get people out of that stupid zone of, because someone puts a white coat on, they know what they're talking about.
That's great.
Yeah. I'll have to have my Albert Einstein suit on. I'm hair all stuck up on end and this silly little mustache and the funny glasses.
Yeah.
But what you were telling about, that electricity will amplify the the bad memories or the good ones, or the bad chemicals or the good. It remembers me to a document I read of like 100 years ago, where they explain a system. It's like a battery chemicals, and they can transfer like this the memory or the information of the chemicals of the battery in the water. And even if there's no chemical in the water, it transfer the memory or the information of the chemicals of the battery. And it's very interesting. It's like we are rediscovering and how it's in nature, and it's a lot of times like this that we we think we have invented a new thing, and then we look in nature and it's already there. But it is just that we didn't see it, and it's really very important and interesting. I had a case like this on it was one of my first experiments with magnets. I was thinking, oh, I can with magnets, I can do a lot of things, and I was thinking only good, and but you can also do bad. and I put a magnet in a garden, and it was to a friend, and he has a little pond with crystal clear water, nice water. And a few weeks after, it was full of algae.
Oh.
And he had a horse, and his horse was healthy. And a few weeks later, he was sick. And during weeks and weeks, he was sick, and that pond was full of algae. And then with time, we discovered that maybe there is a problem with the magnet or the place where we put the magnet. And then in the beginning, I was like, oh no, it's not a magnet. It's for the good. It will not be that. But then after a while, I was thinking, yes, maybe it's the magnet. We need to look. And then we went there, and I had the feeling that it was a certain place where I put the magnet, that it was bad. And then we took it away, and in no time the pond was again crystal clear, and the horse was directly, in a few days, it was again healthy. So, and what I discovered there is what you told, is that when even with magnetic energy, we can amplify also the bad, and there was too much ammonium or nitrogen on a certain place, and it polluted then even more the whole environment there, and it had bad effects. So it's important, yes, to be conscious that it's not only putting and car or electricity or whatever. It's a whole. We need to see the whole environment and the whole context to make it good and to avoid problems like this. But if we take attention to that, we see huge results. Like you see, it's but very interesting. Yes, and that it's a lot about information, a lot about also with light. That does me think about the work also of a researcher in the 50s, 60s in France that is not very known, but he did experiments with flashing light. And he explains, he energized the water with flashing light. And he explains that when he put like a stroboscope, a flashing light on the water, and then all the pollutants or all the particles of the water will go on the walls. Well, like, how to say that? Will stick on the walls, and the water will become crystal pure inside. He explains, and that's but also if on the walls you have a chemical or a product, an example, you can put beeswax, for example. There were experiments like this. Then the flashing light or the light flashes will the idea is that it will excite the water molecule that will itself again radiate energy, but the frequencies of the water molecule. But the same is also with chemicals or with other products. The flashing light will like excite, will give like a push of energy, and the molecule will absorb that energy and then release again energy that will correspond with the frequencies of the molecule. So if it's a good product, you will send out good frequencies for life, and if it's bad, you can also program the water with toxic frequencies. And he did an experiment like this with his secretary. He put some alcohol in the water, and then he flushes the light, and then the energy that came out, he sent through a tube to his secretary that was be radiated by that energy. And then she was like, she was drunk. But she was like drunk. But it's to show that it's really very efficient. And in nature, probably it happens too in the rivers like this. It's why he said it's important to have trees around close to the rivers, because when you have the sunlight and the wind and the leaves and the water flowing, it's like a flashing light on the water, and that helps to clean the water also. Very interesting. And also that water will absorb energy and radiate around. And then they say, that's from other experiments in Germany, that then the plants, the meadows, the grass grow greener around, because it's like nourished by the radiation of the water. But maybe there is something also with what you do with the silica and maybe the moisture and the light. Very interesting, very, very interesting. And what I read, because you put me on the track of the silica, and so then I begin to read about the silica, and it's amazing how much silica you have in the plant around the cell structure. It's maybe it's not so much the photosynthesis that makes the plant growing, but it's also the silica that transform that energy from the light and helps indirectly with to the photosynthesis. It's very, very interesting. I think we will still discover a lot of new things in the coming weeks, years, with all that stuff.
We'll discover a lot of old things too, Yannick.
What?
We will discover a lot of old things that is already known.
Yes.
Yeah.
What I like, I see that you've built a Callahan meter.
Yes.
And I know that on some of the phones now they have Gauss meters, which can measure the electromagnetic field of the Earth.
Yes.
So what we need, what I'd like, is someone to build a meter that can actually measure the electrical current or magnetic field changing in the soil on a constant process, because we see this massive change as you get closer to the poles, how the magnetic field lifts and the electrical field lifts, and it's shorter season and a massive growing and all this process. And it'd be great to be able to have equipment that was, even if they could set it up on the cell phone and place these things across up and down the country at different areas and on different farmers, and watch what goes on, see what the weather's doing, and sort of correlate how this process works. I know from using the voltmeter from east to west, we got a consistent understanding that for us, we had the highest amount of electricity in the soil at the equinoxes. But as for, that's where we are on our geographical process, but I don't believe that's quite the same the further south or the further north you go, where you get this huge growth and it stays growing in a very short period of time, where they grow as much as we do in that short period. And that's just purely electricity and electromagnetics that are causing that. But I mean, that's just that's one of the things I'd like to see. Someone come up with a piece of equipment. That's not my field, but I'm sure someone can do it.
Yes. It's in theory, it's not so difficult to make, but I'm not an electronician. I'm like you, but if we I'm working with some electronicians, and maybe yes, it would be a good idea to measure the evolution day by day, and how the electricity evolves in the soil, and how and which parameters of our environment influences that electricity. Yes, it would be really amazing, and also which I would like to see. For example, with what you do before and after, if we can show that to the farmers directly, it's like the more we will be able to show with measurement devices all those subtle energies and electrical and magnetic changes, the more the farmers will have like understanding. I have some really hard measurements to build on, and to believe, to help to believe or to confirm what we do, because we as researchers, we have all like intuitions and hypotheses, and we need confirmation if it's really true what we think or not. And
yeah, well, that's part of, like, when we're doing the soil samples with the total tests and the availables, and you start to see the changes across the whole process about what goes on, what comes into the available over time, how much more mineral you've actually changed and converted. I you would have been aware of Louis Crevran's work, being a very good Frenchman.
Yeah, Louis Crevran.
Was a
yes.
Yeah.
Louis-Claude Crevran. Yeah.
So we, with us doing the totals and available tests, we can actually see our increase in nutrient from what we didn't put it on. It changed, it converted.
Yeah.
So these are things that are absolute sledgehammer evidence and ability for farmer to go, what do you mean? You actually grew 1,000 kilograms of sulfur? Again, yeah, here's the soil test. It took 4 years or 5 years, but this is what happened. And I grew 300 kilograms of sodium. And well, why doesn't it keep doing it? It knows. It knows what it needs when they're given the opportunity, and then it stops. It doesn't, and then the soil gets deeper. And these are things that we have done our best to monitor as best we can. But I mean, there's a lot more work to be done on it. And we're, with us databasing our clients and that, over time, we look to be able to go back and go, well, look, we tested exactly the same place at the same time of the year, and these are the changes. We've just got one at the moment. They're having a tinker where we're having a go about selling carbon credits out of the soil. Well, they grew 20 tons of actual carbon in 2 years. So whether they'll get any money out of it or not, but in today's market, there was $1.2 million worth. It'd be 600,000 euros for 2 years on 200 hectares. I mean, it's not a bad sort of payday, but on a scale of growing healthy food, it's fantastic. I mean, they're just remarkable.
Yes. About carbon, I think they don't like that idea of the farmers, because they don't want to give the money to the farmers. They want to give it to other people with on the desk.
A lot of technology.
But to come back to what you were talking about. The work of Louis-Claude Crevran and the biological transmutation process. That's really very, very interesting, and it explains a lot of things in agriculture and soil health. I'm completely agree with that, and what is also interesting in combination with electroculture, with the electricity in the soil, is the work of Dr. Papas. Maybe you know about in Greece. And he
read the material though.
Yeah, and he explains that the biological transmutation process needs electricity to make it happen. So it's completely complementary. We need the life, like what calling the bacteria, the fungi, the microbiology. We need the minerals, the trace minerals, and we need the electricity, and all together it makes fertility. And what you observed about the soil fertility that increases over time. I've had a customer like this also in the north of Germany. It was a very sandy soil, and he put my magnets. It was the magnetic antenna connected with a wire and south to north, and he did only that. And he put the same fertilizers. It was like since very long time chemicals. It's not organic, but he put the same fertilizers, the same pesticides, everything the same. And after his soil, after 20 years of intensive conventional farming, had no earthworm anymore, no earthworms, nothing anymore. It was like that. And after 3 years now of electroculture, the earthworms came back. Now it's full of earthworms again, and life. And when they did a soil test of the nutrients, there were more nutrients left over than before. On the other soil, it was still empty, and in the soil with the electroculture, it was like he had every year more yield, but there was still more nutrients in the soil. So it was completely the opposite as the classic education programs learn us at the university or the high schools. So it was completely upside down. And that's very difficult to explain to farmers that has like 20 years of indoctrination of that they need to put minerals and or they need to put certain fertilizers, and they think the soil become empty, like a bottle is empty. That we need to explain that if you put the right energy, the right minerals, the bottle, even if you take a glass tomorrow, it's again full. The bottle is there will be more and more. When we stimulate life, there is more and more life always. I have that idea. I believe that we just need to change our way of doing and to apply the techniques that stimulates life in place of killing it in a certain way. And it's a whole upside down thinking. Yes, very interesting. Yes, yeah. But I don't know enough about soil. I learn, but I think I have a lot to learn about the relation with electroculture techniques and the soil minerals and the transmutation process too. I think we have really a lot of because I think every transmutation process maybe one I come back to what I was thinking. I think every, like the cyanobacteria or the fungi or different microbiology have different needs. And so they will have also different needs in that kind of electrical energy. Maybe one would like more the paramagnetism, like Phil Callahan explains, the other more the silica, the other more electrical energy. And we have, it's like plants need certain minerals, certain nutrients, but they are all different. And well, and with the energy, maybe it's a similar aspect that some need more magnetism, other more electrical energy, other more. It's maybe there's something in that, but that's we will discover over time. But it's already good that we have opened doors, and I think today we are like only a few to work on that track, but I think in close future we will be maybe hundreds and thousands. We hope so.
We will. I think on the answer to your question, like what you're saying there about the multiple species and the multiple different things, I agree wholeheartedly. And what I saw when we started finding the fungal species and introducing them back into the soil and finding them wherever, their interrelationship and that, and like then when you look at the species of plants that grow here during the season, they all interact, but that's all to do with, you put everything that they need there, and then the interaction with the daylight length, the electromagnetic field, the amount of energy created, that's nature just making its decision when it's time to rock and roll, and then how it flows on. Like at this time of the year, we grow lots and lots of red clover, but in another 6 weeks, we'll have ryegrass and white clover coming back. We'll have a massive germination of ryegrass, but the ryegrass won't germinate now. So everything has its time and its place and its interaction with this whole scenario. And that's where we're farmers, and that one of the things they're changing is like they're trying to put this species of ryegrass in, and that's all they're going to grow. And I go, why? It's not suited to summer. And if you've got a healthy soil and a healthy pasture, it'll change 4 times in a year. And there's 3 predominant changes, but you'll see 4 subtle changes through the season. And it's hard for them to get used to that, as you say. So, but there's, the system is brilliant. And I think I saw it probably more than anywhere. There's a place down in Gisborne. I think I put it in the book. It's a place called Gray's Bush. And it's a place where it was never been cultivated. And it's the best soil sample I've ever seen. And Gisborne, the flats, they call it Poverty Bay. I don't know why they call it Poverty Bay. It was better than anywhere else in the country. But the land had been created from volcanic, marine, the absolute perfect situation with Callahan stuff and electrical. And when the white man first went there, there's pictures of cabbages the size of dinner tables. And, and this was off these soils. And I was just like blown away by, you see these cabbages like this, they're huge. And if you go to Gray's Bush, just hold on a second. Ewan here.
Ewan, Lee Noble from Connecticut. Alan Noble's son. How are you?
Good. Can I ring you back in about 20 minutes, Lee?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cheers.
Thanks.
So, in that piece of bush, they've got these native trees, Kaihikatea trees. And in that particular piece of bush, the Kaihikatea trees are probably twice the size as I've seen anywhere else in the country, just because everything was perfect in that area with the electroculture and that. So we took a soil sample, well, a colleague took a soil sample inside of the native bush there, and he took it out where it was the agricultural, been growing maize on it. And this is exactly what you're saying. It's like the native bush had twice as much nutrient as what the farmed land had. So the one that was growing all this magnificent timber, it hadn't actually taken anything out at all. It was putting it back. And, we need to take full cognizance of what the hell's going on and stop running around for people with large, wanting to sell you shit that you don't need in white coats. And the world's ready for the change. And I can see that happening now. and I can see people coming. Like I had another person here yesterday. I didn't get to see him. Paula showed him around, but like I understand that what's happening now, and it's going to happen the same as what, and even more so, I think, what happened last time before I sort of went into the back blocks and started just studying the law and that, is that it will just find its own way and it'll ramp up. And we have to have the information of what we do know available so that people can actually take this on really quickly and make the changes. And we are, luckily enough, we have this, you know, we have a communication and we have ability to do all this stuff. And like, I'm just doing my book in an audio book, just so that when farmers are driving their tractors or whatever, they can listen, because we have not enough time. Or
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome, boss. Yeah. So I think we're at the right time in the right place. Certainly, I'm not that I was very happy going through the process with the law, but I'm very happy that I've been through the process with the law too, because I know how to, you know, hold our space, going, no, you're not allowed in here. And we do need to make it a lot of fun. We have to laugh at ourselves a lot, because there's a lot to laugh at. We're all pretty stupid.
Ewan, coming back to this place in near Gisborne, what's the name of this spot?
Poverty Bay.
Yeah, Poverty Bay.
Yes.
And,
yeah, Gisborne.
Yeah.
And if you go to a place called Gray's Bush.
Gray's Bush.
And you can still see those effects there.
Well, you'll see the kahikatea trees. I don't think they've cut them down. And you'll see, you know, like when you actually look at these magnificent trees, you can see that there's something really going on. And you can see why they cut them all down, because they're fantastic for building and all sorts of stuff like that. Yeah.
And is there a picture with these cabbages?
Oh shit! I haven't got it now, but I remember seeing it when I was down Gisborne, and I haven't got it now. But it was there was an old chap called Bob Maru, and that was 20 years ago now. But like, he was saying to me when I was talking about the electricity in the soil and what was going on, and he came from down there, and he said that he was in the garden with his father when he was 7, and they were spreading fertilizer. And his father said to him, "Those white fellas are stealing our Māori," which is Māori is life force. And like, father knew they were destroying the energy of the soil then. And it's an amazing way to capture people, is to diminish the resources and make everybody feel like you have to do this and that to survive, when on the other side of it, you can actually multiply it to whatever you want.
Yes,
the subject of life force, I found recently again an article from like 150 years ago, and then they were speaking about life force, like it's logic, it's existing, and then after a while, the previous century, they put that term all away, like it doesn't exist anymore. But it's really about life force.
Right.
Very important, and to maintain and to stimulate or to create the environment that the life force can flow in a certain way. That's like this. I think we are really, we can help to spread that. What we do, it's just by examples, by showing, by just doing. And then the other, I had a friend like this in his garden. He was putting antennas and doing different, and his neighbor was telling him what to do. What are you doing? No, don't do it like this, do it like this. And And after a year, the garden with the antennas were really fantastic, growing like 2-3 times more than before. And the neighbor afterwards, he didn't he didn't explain anymore how to do, because in his garden it was not as good. So it's really by example. If we show and we experiment, and then we learn from each other, and then people asking questions, and they just do the same process as we do, just we see good results and we ask questions. And
Right.
and yes, and like this it happens. And we
Well,
are in a time where people are asking a lot of questions, so it's a very good time for that. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
we
maybe
wanted to say.
we can think of a way to continue this, or maybe invite other people, or have like once a month or every 2 months or something, you know, kind of a panel discussion, and we can share of examples, and just to inspire more people. That, hi, Paula. So
It could
yeah,
be
maybe we
great
can
to interview farmers that applies, and to have their testimonials and exchange like this. Yes, it can maybe, or other people together like this. I'm ready for it, like you want, and I can give you some contacts. But I know more people in France, so that speaks French. But I will think about if I know others that speak English, to put in contact.
Mhm.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
It's, the more we share, that internet become really useful, and not filled with nonsense. But if we can bring some interesting stuff, yes, it's good. And we learn all together.
Yeah, you think you and that would support you as well if we have, you know, like conversations, discussions, or have examples and showcases, and invite people to be part of it?
Well, this is where we're going at the moment on getting this platform developed, like an online newspaper and training, and and where we were doing podcasts with farmers about their experiences and a whole lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm only too happy to be part of something on a much bigger scale. But you know, like it looks like we've got a crew together that want to be part of this process, and we'll be over the next couple of weeks really putting the framework to it and getting started. There's just so many people that are coming in, and yeah, thank you for that. I like if we can have it in a multi-language platform, so that we can interact no matter where we are. And the same thing is, like, you know, to have interviews with Yannick and some of your people in France, whether they're in English or French, so we can translate them back. I mean, it's just the more information about what people are doing to get us away from this toxic agriculture, and to get us to a point where the consumer and the people that are in the towns and all that we aren't the evil enemy that's destroying the environment, that we are, wow, let's go get the food from him, you know, like it's, you know, it's yeah, it's crazy. But I'm going to have to get going because my phone's going bonkers because it's hit work time.
Yeah, right. It's early in the morning, right?
Yeah.
So, well, thank you both very much for your time, for sharing, you know, your stories, your information, and then we'll just think of a way to continue. And even if it's just, you know, once a quarter or something, to have a meeting online and invite other people, and you know, we'll take it from there. So thank you very much, and we'll stay
One
in
thing
touch.
one thing that I will do, and what we need to do, you know, like you've asked the questions about how can they help these gardeners and bits and pieces. I'm going to try and get the geological terminology for some of the products we use together, so that the geologists, or when you're looking for this, there's not going to be a confusion, sort of say, or we'll try and get the terminology together so that if we say, hey, this is what we're looking for in your area, that can start to construct these materials to put them together to do these things. And then that's universal as far as the, like whatever country you go to, whatever language, they go, oh yeah, that's such and such, and that is here and that is here. And so it's something that we need to get done, because it's the need to find those natural materials and the ability to actually process them and get onto it. Yeah, it's speeding up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. Thank you very much, Ewan. It was really a great pleasure to exchange and to hear you. It's really very, very happy. And I will continue to speak also about your work in my network in France and in Europe, and maybe your book will be one day translated. If you want, I can maybe help for it. We will see.
Into France,
because
yes.
I think it's very interesting information to share, and we keep in contact, and maybe we meet us again in interviews, or maybe in a real one day, and we see. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that we'll meet for real one day. And yes, I mean, if there's a requirement to get it translated into German and or French, I think someone might have done it already in the German side. Very naughty of them, but they didn't ask us, but like slightly stolen. But yeah, it might be a good avenue to actually get it translated properly and then get it printed over there if people want to get it done. So, and it's a good thing now with the way that technologies, you can have small runs of books, or maybe we'll sell thousands.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. All right.
So-
So thank you very much, and take good care of yourselves, and we'll stay in touch. And have a great evening and great day, Ewan. Thank you. Bye for
Bye.
now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.